either. I went around it, so.
Oh, wow. How long have you been radio?
So I got back into terrestrial radio 2016.
Really?
Yeah. So before that, just doing some digital, but I was in traditional radio coming out of high school. Did some syndicated programming.
Oh, okay.
Small station out in a small town in southeast. I was starting off doing Rush Limbaugh back in the day, man.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah, so it's so far from what I'm doing now.
When you say doing Rush Limbaugh, you mean like as a producer or coming on the air?
Yeah, so it was syndicated programming. So we just patched in into a local affiliate here in the small town Sylacauga.
Oh,
yeah.
So you were patching Limbaugh?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah, we were patching in.
You know what? I'm gonna tell you, I have. I'm not a conservative, but conservatives never scared me. You know, I mean, super racist people, obviously, that's an issue, right? But you know, a lot of the like conservative country folks I know are not as bad as we think. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I grew up in the South, and I knew people that would be called rednecks from Kentucky and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them were actually the nicest people I ever knew.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I had things in common with them. You know what I mean? So I think it's like, and I think about that because you mentioned Limbaugh. And I remember the day Michael Jackson died, I was filling in on a radio show for a friend of mine who was on a conservative network, and he came in like right after Limbaugh, right before Hannity. So I'm like, shit, what am I gonna be getting into? This is gonna be crazy. And I had the best time, man. And the callers that called in were super respectful, even if they disagreed, you know. And I was like, okay, this ain't so bad. I think the country would get better if you know we have more dialogue across channels like that.
Yes, that's exactly what it boils down to. It's being able to take the time to listen and sit down and, you know what I'm saying, and be open to hear other people's perspective.
Yeah, and people don't do that no more. Everybody's right.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm right and you wrong, and to hell with you. And that's just bullshit to me.
Yeah, listening, man. Listening is a big part of it.
Yeah, people don't listen.
To get to understand.
Can you move in a little?
Someone?
No, I just need him to move in.
Oh.
You guys are too spread apart.
Actually, if you get a chance, I wouldn't mind some water. But I want to interrupt this brother's interview. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk so much, bro.
Oh, yeah, no, it's okay, man. Yeah, so we're here with Dr. Boyce Watkins, and he's in attendance for the 15th annual Age of Gaston conference here in Birmingham. Have you been to Birmingham before? What's your experience here in the city?
Yeah, you know, I've been to Birmingham. I don't really recall many opportunities to get into the trenches of the city in terms of really getting to know the people here and really doing as much here as I should have done or would like to have done. Other parts of Alabama, yes. Birmingham, not as much. And it's funny, the main thought I had about Birmingham, or actually Alabama, was 20-some years ago, I had a crazy girlfriend from Alabama. And I said, is that the only memory I can conjure up from Alabama? And I'm telling you, man, she was scary, but I'm really glad to be here, and I have so much respect, you know, for the history of the city. You know, it makes me think about my hometown, Louisville. You know, Muhammad Ali grew up there and whatnot, and so in a way there was like a little bit of a parallel there in terms of you know, just Birmingham's role, just as such an iconic part of, you know, civil rights history, Black history, etc.
Yes, man. There was a lot done, you know, throughout the 60s that, you know, contributed to the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and so forth. But after Dr. Martin Luther King's death, I feel as though there was a stall or a pause, like people kind of rested on those laurels, you know, and it's only been until recent years, and then I would say in the last 5 years that we've had a jolt of like this energy and, you know, into the city, and that's because of technology. So we're getting a lot of new startups and firms here that are moving into Birmingham, which I think is very advantageous, especially to the Black community, because opportunity is so much widely available now.
Well, you know, you make a good point about, you know, Dr. King's death kind of leading to this big, you know, chasm in terms of our progress as people in our thinking. And the thing is, you know, I think we got to just be real that was not coincidental. You know, it wasn't accidental that we had this lull. It was designed. It was by design. I mean, even now when you see the brother, he's a white guy, but this brother that wrote that spent 40 years researching how Dr. King actually died, and people are starting to find out that it was much more complicated than we were led to believe. You know, than some random guy shooting him from across the street. A lot of people believe, you know, that there was a plot to take him out, and there's evidence, a lot of evidence supporting this. And when you you sort of see that to me is one example of how we really need to go back to the past to understand the present and the future. Like we really got to re-examine the last 50, 60 years, figure out, okay, where were the gains? What was the deception and where were the distractions? You know, you tie that in with, because remember right after King died, you had the war on drugs and mass incarceration and the crack epidemic and just all these things. So sort of like, okay, let's figure out, you know, everything from the last 50, 60 years. Let's rewrite our own history and understand it. You know, in terms of what we did and didn't gain from even the civil rights movement itself, even that has to be challenged in certain areas, right? So that we can design, you know, just build a better car moving forward. You know what I mean? Like what was, for example, with Dr. King right before he died, right before I believe they killed him, you know, what was he talking about the most? He was talking about economics, right? And he started, you know, talking about, you know, integrating it into a burning house, which leads us to think about people like A.G. Gaston, who actually, I don't believe A.G. Gaston could have become who he was if it weren't for segregation, right? Not to argue in favor of segregation, but I mean, it was a station that allowed him to connect and to be in his own community with his own people, doing business with his own people, building institutions with his own people, right? So I think that as people of color, I'm not saying we should go backward and try to segregate or anything like that. I don't believe in us dividing ourselves from the rest of the world. I believe we always remain connected, but we got to know how to remain connected while simultaneously being empowered. And to do that delicate dance, you have to know how to figure out what you know, where's your core? Like, who are you? Like, what is really yours versus what is really theirs? Like, you and I are sitting here together, but I know the difference between my arms and your arms, my legs and your legs. You know, we were eating food. I know the difference between your plate and my plate. It'd be different if I was sitting there looking at your plate saying, well, how come you ain't giving me none of your food, right? Well, it's not your job to feed me, right? It's my job to get up and get a plate for myself. So I think for Black folks, we got to learn how to get our own plate, right? And I think that's where we are right now as a people.
Yes, ownership. It all boils down to ownership and then entrepreneurship as well. And in Birmingham right now, with the tech sector that's moving in, we're seeing a lot of growth in those areas. So a lot of women, people of color, you know what I'm saying, are starting up a lot of businesses utilizing technology. And then we getting support as well here in the city from, you know, the city of Birmingham, and, you know, certain resources are being funneled to Innovation Depot here. I don't know if you're familiar with that or if you heard about it.
I've heard that Birmingham's making a move, like a Silicon Valley-ish kind of move,
Yes,
which
we
I think is brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yes, so that's what's happening right now. So we're still in the, you know, early stages of it, but we're showing some really great signs of it so far. You know, with several companies here in Birmingham doing some work on the tech side. So I'm excited. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about what's happening with our infrastructure being upgraded here with the 5920. As you can see when you step outside, all of that is relative, you know what I'm saying, to overall economic, you know, development here in Birmingham, especially on the north side, so north of the 20, I-20, that comes along the downtown area here. So you'll see a lot of new growth, retail spaces opening up, which was at one time a lot over on this side was, you know, residential. You know, so a lot of those houses and things like that are getting bought up. So we're growing in a good way, but then there's other areas where a lot of Black people may not have access to resources or finances to get loans to actually, you know, take advantage of buying property. So there's some companies, you know what I'm saying, you know, these older, more developed, you know, companies are coming in that have the money to buy up these properties at low prices and then to do development on it.
Yeah, that's such a tough one, you know. You know, that access to capital issues is
right.
You know, it's a big hurdle, and I would say, you know, on a local level, there's a lot more leverage that people in the community have. If you have adequate leaders and people challenging the leaders enough to make sure that they do the right thing, I believe that on a local level, you have that ability to go and get that support you're talking about, you know, for the business incubators and things like that. I think that, you know, when you're talking about banks and how banks are loaning money, where the money's going, you know, we have a lot of institutions like churches, for example, that can lead the way in making sure these banks are loaning money in the areas that it needs to be loaned, to the people that it needs to be loaned to, right?
Yes.
So I think a lot can be done, with basic ideas like encouraging those who truly want to walk the walk, as opposed to just talking the talk about, sort of everybody rising at the same time. Encouraging them to say, okay, well, just loan a few $1 million so that we can establish businesses, in our communities. Is there a business district, for people that might typically be underserved, that that is owned in part by the people in that community. Form these productive partnerships and not these transparent partnerships that you kind of see in certain cities. That unfortunately some cities are just overtaken by so much corruption and everything else. It's hard to kind of make that actually happen in a way that benefits everybody.
Yeah, yes. And, a big part of that, talking about loans, is associating with Black-owned banks, institutions, lending providers, saying, that are minority-owned and operated. And for me personally, I haven't yet to set up a bank account with a Black bank yet. That's, so shame on me. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, that's something that I definitely need to do for myself, and to be a part of that. I know you have some experience with Black banks, right? Because I know at one time you were talking about this on your show and your podcast too, about associating with Black-owned banks and institutions.
Yeah, I think that when we talk about this idea of supporting Black-owned banks, given that we're at the A.G. Gaston conference, I think it's appropriate to use A.G. Gaston as a great example of this. When you look at his history, when he first started his first business, he was selling these sandwiches to coal miners. The next thing he did was he started loaning money, because he had this extra cash and he's loaning money and charging interest. So he basically became a bank, right? And so one of the things that's going to have to happen for us to really move forward in what I call the Black economic revolution is we have to be super creative in terms of how we view institutional setups, right? A bank isn't just, a savings and loan or some federally chartered institution that has depositors and withdrawals and all that stuff. I mean, that's one form of a bank, but really a bank is a pile of resources and capital, an endowment, if you will, that we can draw from in order to make investments, and we put back into that, right? So one of the lectures that I give my students in the Black Business School is how to create your own family bank. In my family, we have a family bank, which is basically a pile of resources we have available for anybody that has good investment ideas that the family can participate in. But the requirement is that you can't just show up with your hand out, because we're not a welfare office, but we will invest in you, but you must come back and get back to the tree. You can't just take the apples, you must plant seeds to grow more trees, right? So that becomes almost like a culture where it's an understanding, like, look, if you showing up here asking for money, you better tell me how you're going to give back more than what you took out, right? And if you can't do that, then you can't be part of this coalition, right? And so I think that when we're thinking about supporting Black banks, supporting Black businesses is almost as effective as supporting Black banks, because those businesses become banks for their family members when they have the right mindset. So it's okay if you don't have a deposit in a Black bank. The question is, are you depositing something in the Black community that adds value, wealth, resources, whatever? And it's not just money either. It's all different kinds of capital, whether it's your labor, maybe you're drawing attention to businesses, helping them market on social media, whatever it is. Make a contribution to Black institutions that are leading to the creation of wealth and the development of resources for the people that you care about.
Wow. So we can expect to hear more of this, your experiences as well, here today, right?
Yeah, I hope so. I look forward to it. I have some notes on what I want to say, but then sometimes God tells me to say something else, and I say what I believe needs to be said at that time for the people that are listening. Because the goal at the end of the day is we all just picking up a shovel and helping to dig ourselves out of this hole and build something great.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, man, sitting down with me and just chatting.
Oh, thank you, bro.
Yeah, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent interview.
Very good.
And what's your radio station there?
98.7 KISS FM.
98.7 Kiss FM.
Yeah.
In
The number
Birmingham.
one urban AC radio station in the country.
There you go. Oh, uh-oh. In the country?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
You kidding me?
Yeah, man. Our impressions is large, especially among African American listeners.
Okay. Y'all
We
hear
put out
that?
everybody. Atlanta, DC, Birmingham, number one urban AC.
Wow.
98.7 Kiss.
Nice, nice. And what's your name, brother?
I am Brian K. Odin, and you can follow me on social media at Brian Odin. That's Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, all that good jazz.
Okay, there you go. All right. The next Charlemagne the God. All right, brother. Thank you so much for the interview.
My man, yes sir.
All right.
So you gonna be in town for how long? Is it just a day or?
Yeah, we leave in the morning, I think.
Okay.
Fly out tomorrow. Yeah.
Have you got a chance to meet the mayor, Mayor Woodford yet?
No, no.
Yeah, you gotta meet him.
Really?
Mayor Woodford, man, real cool guy.
Really?
Yeah.
How long's he been there?
So this has just been the last year. Yeah, newly elected.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, newly elected. And as well as Danny Carr, he's our first elected DA in Jefferson County, African American.
And then Mark Petway, I guess.
And Mark
He's the
Petway,
first
too.
Black sheriff.
So in the last year, we were making like history. Still, like these benchmarks and these barriers are being broken.
Wow.
Yeah, man. So that's what I was telling you before. In the 60s, it was like, you know what I'm saying, we kind of stopped and rested on our laurels. And so now we're just kind of picking up, you know what I'm saying? But it's the newness, the new generation, the new kids are really, you know, being affected, you know.
All
So,
right. I love it.
yeah. So I hope you get a chance to meet him, man.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll see him today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. It's so funny. Just about 5 years ago, I remember I was in this thing with Cornel West, and the whole time, all he kept complaining about was how the young people are asleep. They sleepwalking. They sleepwalk. This is about like 2012, 2013,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's like I think Trayvon Martin happened, and then a couple other things happened. Everybody woke up.
Yeah.
It's been great ever since, man. Yeah, well, nice meeting you, bro.
You too, man. Pleasure, man.
And, you'll be one of the same thing. I don't know if you're gonna be around, but I look forward to seeing you again.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Look at you.
Oh, am I? Am I live? And these are the wonderful black people that I get to meet. Oh, so I'm doing another interview?
Yes.
Okay, you want to
You want to keep it?
Okay, so let me show them the donuts.
How you doing, man? How you feeling? You good?
Yes, indeed.
Go down. Okay.
So you guys about to start, right?
Yeah. He and I about to start
It's
up.
too. It needs to be disrupted. The pattern is too perfect. So now it's imperfect.
You needed to move them around a little bit.
Man, I'm
Though.
hanging in there.
They're still perfect.
How's it going so far?
So now there's a void.
So good.
Something's
Today,
missing.
yesterday.
Oh yeah.
No, it's still perfect.
Looking forward to
I'm waiting on you, dog. You take time, man. You take time. Chris Coleman, how you doing?
Oh, okay. I
VP
thought
of
y'all-
programming. For,
Y'all had done the thing yet?
no, my kids went before me because I got stuck in the accident.
Oh, I see. Okay.
The accident on the interstate.
Actually, it'd be good if you guys sat up there.
Oh, did you want to sit here? Or
You want to sit up there in front of the thing? This is video audio.
This is gonna be audio.
Oh,
It's
okay.
audio, so we should
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Let's sit here.
Okay.
Because I want you to have the whole.
Sit calm.
Yes.
I'm gonna let you know when you
Sorry,
get
y'all. So yeah, give it to him at 5. And mention to Deborah to please
Make sure I got
let
it.
everybody know we got a quick little session.
All right.
Start.
First of all, man, honor to be here with you.
Start
You know that, man.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, that's got to be alcohol.
I follow your stuff on YouTube and I've seen your they send your stuff out to me. I don't know how I've been getting it, but it comes by email.
Yeah.
And I've been getting your stuff, man, and it's really informative and educational. So
Oh,
you
thank
know that you teach me a lot.
Oh, thank you very much.
My name is Chris Coleman. I am the Vice President of Programming for Courtney French Broadcasting. Courtney French is a young attorney who bought a heritage radio station here when it was AM and flipped it to FM last year this time.
I heard about that.
Yeah,
It's wonderful.
yeah, I was working for iHeart. I was a senior vice president of programming for the state of Alabama.
Oh, very nice.
And I left a corporate to come help him start this. I just thought that it just felt like go do it. Even though I took a pay cut, all this stuff to come here because he started from scratch, like nothing, no advertisers, no nothing. Now the station is really growing. So and then we keeping it in the neighborhood. We keeping it right. We like that 108 station that was on do the right thing, do right there in the neighborhood. You can just walk in off the street, come right on in and say, hey.
Oh, I love
right
it.
Here. Yeah, so that's where we are.
Well, you didn't take a pay cut. You took a pay increase. You just got a little less money, but you got so many things more valuable than money.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and I think that's, and then the money will follow too.
Oh yeah.
You know, but I think you took a pay increase. I mean, think about this. You're working with people that you care about. You're doing something that matters. You're a boss. You're an owner. Those are increase.
Yeah.
Right. Who cares about the money, man? I mean, the money will
Come eventually. Yeah. It sounds just like him. One of the things I really want to harp on about is I hear you talk about economic. Go ahead.
Let him know you're on YouTube.
Sorry.
Let him know you're live.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm live on YouTube. Right?
Okay, you live on YouTube.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. Okay. Well, look, I didn't know. But let's. I want to backtrack a bit. Some of the stuff that you talk about, the economic empowerment about keeping the money here, families starting businesses within the family. Where did you get that idea? How did that transpire? Like something had to motivate you to go in that direction.
Let's see. Well, okay. So I guess the motivation, you can split it into a couple of areas.
Mm-hmm.
You got personal, then you got sort of the big picture.
Okay.
What you're seeing in the community,
Right.
stuff like that.
Right.
Personal.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't have a lot of tolerance for racism. I don't have a lot of tolerance for being bossed around, told what to do, disrespected, undervalued. I didn't have much ability. I'm not built for slavery. I can't.
Right.
That just isn't how I was made. So what I figured out was I always had an interest in having personal empowerment. I didn't necessarily want to be able to control other people, but I wanted to be able to at least have control over my own life.
Okay.
And I thought for a long time that getting a lot of education and getting a good job was the key to having that. And I actually gravitated toward academia because I thought I'd have more freedom than I'd have, say, in a corporate setting. And I found that just wasn't really the case. I found that the stench of racism rises to the highest levels of our society, even if you're president of the United States. We saw this, right?
See this. Right.
Right. So what I learned was that to escape the toxins of systematic racism, in institutional racism, you don't just try to go to the top of the building, the top of the institution. Sometimes you got to leave the building to get away from it, right? And build another building, right? So I went from saying, okay, let's change systems from the inside, or let's tolerate the system, to saying, let's just leave. Why can't we build a system? And because you think about that, right? We believe in this idea of equality between blacks, whites, and everybody else. Well, if they can build it, why can't we build it?
Right.
Why are you telling me I can't do what that man over there can do?
Absolutely right.
He's got a heart and lungs just like me, 2 legs, 2 arms. And anybody who disagrees with me, then that makes you a racist. So we got a lot of black racists in the sense that I'm talking about racism against black people who are white supremacists, who will get mad at you for saying that you can do the same thing that a white man can do. And I reject that vehemently, right? Okay. So I just said, I think that we can do something, separate. And I think that if I get away from this, it'll be good for my, not just economic health, but it was really more like mental health and physical health. Because a lot of black folks they die early from racism. The stress of racism kills us, literally. Right. So that was my personal journey. Now, from a broader systematic perspective, what I realized for black folks is that we can't wait for Superman to come and fix the things that affect us the most.
Okay.
It's the responsibility of other people to fix it. I hope that they do, but I'm not really sure I have a lot of confidence that the very same people who spent 400 years oppressing us are suddenly gonna have the political will to come up with solutions to fix that oppression, to reverse that oppression, and to make us whole again. I just don't believe that. No. It's like asking a group of rapists to go and to help their rape victims get therapy and to overcome the effects of the rape. Now, the best you're going to get from the rapist is maybe they'll stop raping you. Maybe they'll stop. Maybe they'll even pay you some restitution, or something. But the healing process is going to be up to you. They're not qualified, nor will they be incentivized to do it. So I believe that for black folks, we've been through a lot in this country, and I don't have a lot of confidence that those who played a part in that oppression are gonna really be instrumental in helping us to fix this. And a big part of that healing is an economic healing, right? A lot of the reason we feel controlled and constrained every day is because somebody controls the economics in our household. You know, I'm not feeding my kids. You know, my employer is feeding my kids, and my employer is usually is somebody who doesn't look like me.
Right.
So what I propose to families is to say, you know, to hell with the politics. Start with what you have in front of you.
Okay.
You know, we cannot pretend that as Black people in America that we are without opportunities. You know, and we are trained to believe this. This is the propaganda that's fed to us, sometimes even by people who claim to be our friends, you know, Democrats and stuff like that. You know, we're trained to believe that being Black means you have nothing. If you're born poor, you must die poor. Despair is all that's going to be served to you every day. You have no opportunity to improve your condition. And we know that's not true because there are millions of Black people who you know, accelerate and change their condition, just, you know, through certain decisions and things like that. So what I've said is, let's look at that 1.1 trillion in spending power that we have every year, and we now pay attention. We give away about $1 trillion of that, $1 trillion of that money every year. So we're donating to all of this, right? You know, so even a $1 trillion reparations bill wouldn't mean a whole lot because we give $1 trillion back every year. So as soon as we get the trillion, we're gonna hand it right back, right? If we maintain the mindset. So what I've said to families is, let's look at other communities that have actually engaged in the act of nation building, who engaged in the act of institution building, who've actually been able to liberate themselves, and let's see if we can learn from those lessons. So we draw, you know, in the Black Business School, we draw stories. I have my students read this book called An Empire of Their Own, How the Jews Invented Hollywood. It's written by a Jewish man, so it's not anti-Semitic. It explains in detail how oppressed Eastern European Jews were able to develop institutions in Hollywood to control the image of how other people see their people, how they were also able to build economic power. When their children were not allowed to attend certain schools, they would build schools. When they couldn't get into certain country clubs, they'd start a country club. Next thing you know, everybody wants to be in their country club, right? You know, I tell them to study the Mormons and how the Mormons with I forgot the man's name, but Brigham Young, you know, and how they left oppression and literally went out and established something of their own. They just abandoned that system and went to a system that worked for them. And they're still part of society, right? They're still part of the broader systems, but it's a more empowered way. So, you know, to answer that question specifically, I believe that the solution to Black problems will come from the Black family. I believe that there are basic things happening when it comes to what we do with the economics that we have, that if we rectify those things, we would see a lot of progress almost immediately. For example, if every Black child in America was taught to start a business by the age of 12, like A.G. Gaston, you will see Black wealth increase by about $5 trillion in a generation.
Wow.
Right?
Amazing.
Right. If every Black person in America invested as much in stocks and bonds as we spend on fast food, just not take away the fast food. If you still want to go to Wendy's and White Castle, that's on you. But if you just match the amount that we spend on fast food or consumer items and put that towards stock investing, we would have thousands more millionaires in a generation, right? It doesn't happen overnight, but it would happen in a generation. The math proves this. This is not me speculating. This is not me giving an opinion. This is me speaking as a financial scientist on the mathematics behind investing and how money grows. You know, how, for example, Warren Buffett always talks about how he invested $142 in 1942, and it's now, I think it's now worth about, I think $1 million or something crazy like that, or, you know, whatever. So at the end of the day, the family is the solution. I think that if you study families that have started family businesses, they have been able to create a type of freedom that's not that common for a lot of our families that don't sort of think that way. And so what I say is that every Black family should have a family business. Every Black family should have economic conversations in your family. Every Black family should take an inventory of all the resources that you are giving away to other people that could be used to build an institution within your own space. So one example, and I'll say this and I'm gonna shut up. I know,
because I want to touch on something you just said. It hit me 2017 that I'm a DJ working for the biggest radio company in the world, which was iHeart, and something told me that I have nothing to show for it, and I've been in radio for 35 years, and I kept hearing God say, do something. So I like, you know what I'm gonna do? I've been looking at people download Spotify and Pandora and all of that. Why can't I build an app like that? And I'm a DJ. It's totally different. This is not a this is a company that's putting music in. I'm a DJ that plays music every day. I have a brand here. So I got a website done and did all of that. And I wanted that to be my family business. I'm even taught my girls how to, hey, this is how you load the log. This is how this works. So in case one day, you know, daddy ain't here, they can keep me going. I can sell advertisement on this. I can do any type of marketing. My website is, I got a web girl that handles my website. So, and I promote and market it right now with the means that I have, you know. And I do this to make sure I have something for my family. That's what basically I'm doing it for.
Yeah, it's about stockpiling, you know, the energy that you put out, so that you're not just sort of spinning your wheels. It's about being, you know, very deliberate and intentional about somehow. It's like if you got a bunch of water coming out of a faucet, and you just sort of get under the faucet and take a drink whenever you're thirsty, and the water's just flowing and it's all going down the drain. And then when you turn the water off, then it'll be as if no water was ever there in the first place, because all the water came through and went down the drain. But if you put a bucket underneath that water faucet, then you can fill up all these buckets of water and you have them in the freezer, and you've got something to show for the fact that all this water has come through. And money, it is funny they call money liquidity, because the analogy works perfectly. Our income is like water coming out of the faucet, and what happens is the income comes out and it goes down the drain and it disappears. But smart people are the ones who pull out the buckets, and they're putting these buckets of water in the freezer, and they never get thirsty, because when the water stops flowing, they just go to the freezer and they get them a block of ice and melt it, and they got plenty of water to drink, right? And that literally is exactly how you explain the difference between rich people and broke people. That's how a high income person can be broke. Because the thing is that I could give you all the income in the world, but you'll never build wealth if you're always refusing to put a bucket underneath the faucet. Or if your bucket has a big leak in it, I could give you all the water in the Pacific Ocean, and when I turn that water faucet off, you will still have no water. You will die of thirst because you have a leaky bucket. So the black community's biggest problem financially is not just all the other issues of racism and all, which is very, very real. Our biggest problem is we got a leaky bucket. We leak $1 trillion in wealth every year, and that's just the money. The money is the small part of what we leak. The big loss is in terms of human capital. Like if you have, for example, a family with 4 educated Negroes in their family, an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, and a nurse, the mindset in the very beginning is, okay, I'm gonna go get a job working for that white man. I'm gonna go get a job working for this white man. I'm gonna get a job working, and it ain't even gotta be white men. It can be anybody outside of your community, right? So everybody in the morning gets up and they all scatter and they all give their very best energy, like you were talking about as a DJ. That we give our best energy to somebody else's institution. So they got a bucket. They're taking the energy we're putting out and they're capturing that in the form of wealth. And then we bust our butt for 40, 45 years and then have nothing to show for it, except, except heart disease and diabetes and strokes and heart attacks, right? Yeah. And, whereas what if you had a family with that same group of talented people, and they were all raised to start businesses, and they were all raised to think like an A.G. Gaston in terms of ownership and empire creation, then what would happen is that their energy, instead of turning it outward, it would all be turned inward. It would be like, okay, I'm a doctor. How can I help add to the family wealth? I'm a nurse. How can I add to the family business, etc.? So that has to be the shift in thinking. Stop looking outward, because we're trained as black people to always look toward the world to get what we need. Look inward, because you got everything you need, and the gold is buried in your backyard. You just got to go dig in the right places.
Man, look, I want to take time out right now to thank you for spending some time with us here at V94.9. I want you to come back. I would love to have you on the air, man, sometime. I've had to talk to Courtney to get you in, to bring, as our owner, to fly you in here, man, to really come in here and educate us, because they got to come see you today to really hear what you're saying, because what you're saying need to be heard, especially the neighborhood that I'm in. They need to hear this.
Right.
Thanks a lot, man, for coming by, y'all. We got more on the way. Keep it locked in, y'all, to B94.9 WATV.
All right.
All right.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm good now.
Excellent radio voice.
Oh, man.
Oh, no, he can get the party.
Oh,
Warm it
yeah?
up, Chris.
Yeah,
love
man.
it.
I've been DJing here. My Dr. A.G. Gaston gave me my first job. Straight
Really?
out of the military.
Oh, my
Sure
goodness,
did.
you're kidding me.
I worked for A.G. Gaston. He's the only black FM in Birmingham for years.
Wow.
And I was on the WIN advisory board when it was WNN's advisory board in high school. And when I got out the military, I came down here and they gave me a job straight out of high school. So I started part-time. They helped me get my feet wet. And I worked, and I loved Dr. Gaston, man, because he's a man of his word. I remember being a part of the A.G. Gaston's Boys Club. And Dr. Gaston, I never, he would come by and talk to the little, man, he pull up in this nice car. You know, we're young, and we like, whoa. And he would talk to us, and I remember this question. I said, I was about 10. I said, Dr. Gaston, how did you become rich? He said, son, I found a need and I filled it.
Yep.
I didn't understand a word he said until 5 years later in my class. I said, whoa! It got me. He said, they needed insurance. I opened an insurance company. He said he had people that didn't know how to do typing. They wanted to hire.
He started a Booker T. Washington.
So he started a business college to teach women how to type so he can hire them. I said,
He didn't find the people with their skill set, so he's like, I'll train them and then they can help me.
then they can help me with
What you do?
Yep.
Yep.
Brilliant.
Well, I'm
man.
gonna
He was
let you
so
rest because you need to rest because you on at 12, so it's 10 o'clock.
Okay.
And that's end of your media interview.
Yeah,
Yes,
man.
ma'am.
Good, man. Thank you so much, Doc. I would love for him to come back, man.
Okay.
I would love to have him on air. We told tell Courtney, man, we need to get this dude.
All right.
Yeah, well, you know, Courtney probably is coming down here today. Make sure you see Courtney.
We're still on.
Oh, okay.